So what would you get if you grabbed the granddaddy of master B-movie cinema, Roger Corman, and had him make his own version of Resident Evil? You're gonna get OverBlood. You know, just when I thought I was running out of survival horror games, the PlayStation 1 still introduces me some great forgotten hidden gems. What's up, guys? I am so happy to say that today I'm going to be giving my little thoughts on OverBlood. I've heard so much really interesting things about this game, good and bad, mostly bad. But a lot of my friends who have the same taste as me, who likes playing games like Rising Zan, Samurai Western, God Hand, or even Deadly Premonition, knows what I'm talking about when I say that this game is awesome. Yes, a little janky, bit clunky and stiff, but in my opinion, I think it was ahead of its time. Now, this game came out in the same year as Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil, which I can't stress enough because it seems a lot of people really compare it so harshly with Resident Evil. And yes, a little similarities with its tank controls, the character kind of resembling Barry Burton, I guess like some of the creatures kind of look like the generic zombies from Resident Evil, and there is a science experiment that gone wrong in the end. But there's still a lot of things that this game introduces that I think outshines Resident Evil. I know, very, very controversial topic. But again, it's kind of harsh to compare something when it was released in the same year and just a couple months afterwards. But I get it. This came out early August 1996 and Resident Evil came out in March of 1996. But in the US, this didn't come out until almost a year after Resident Evil came out here in the States. So I can kind of see why some critics kind of compared it to Resident Evil. But pretty much the plot of this, and I will get into some spoilers, not too many, but again, this game's from 1996, and there's a lot of infamous scenes and moments in this game that I'm sure a lot of you know so far. Now, the plot of this is like you play as this character who wakes up with amnesia, of course, from being into some state of like deep, cold sleep on the capsule, and you're trying to figure out who you are, where you're at, and what the hell is going on. And on your journey, you're introduced to various characters. One being the very first in the beginning of the game named Pipo, this cute little robot, almost like a C-3PO, not C-3PO, R2-D2 kind of machine. Super cute, and it's very charming with the way they interact with each other in the game. Because your character, he figures out his name is Raz, and again, the way they talk to each other, the way they kind of like go through about like some of the puzzles in the games, and how they kind of like, I don't know, you grow a good bond with this robot, and it kind of helps you because the robot almost becomes like a comfort blanket for yourself as a player, because the whole game is very isolated, very cold feeling. So just hearing that robot making its noise and sound effects alongside you does give you that comfort blanket. And sadly, as the game progresses, the robot does die. Pipo sacrifices himself to you, and it is a kind of a harsh kind of like scene. I mean, I think it's very sad, but of course it does end with one of the most infamous parts of the game.
I'm a dead man. No! People. Come on, Pipo. You'll pull through, I know you can. Shake it off, Pipo. Self-diagnose, you can make it. Don't leave me, Pipo.
So yes, so the voice acting in this game isn't the greatest, but it isn't horrible either. I mean, I think it's in the great, it writes in the line of between Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Where Silent Hill was more like uncanny, like David Lynchian kind of dialogue, where Resident Evil is more B-movie, this is definitely right in the center where some of the dialogue is pretty passable and then sometimes it gets a little hammy. But then that's when you kind of notice when the robot, your friend, does die early in the game, because you have a few moments of just silence, your footsteps just echoing through the facility, and it's a very lonely feeling, and which I thought was very interesting. It's not soon after you do meet somebody named Millie, and then you go through the game with Millie solving puzzles, but you still don't fully trust her. Of course, the game ends with some horrific science experiments, which I won't really get into because the little mysteries that this game kind of throws at the player is pretty good. It actually makes you think, like, what the hell is going on? I mean, as it progresses and you kind of you see what's going on, you kind of see what's going to happen. And I thought it was kind of, I mean, a little weak at that point, but still everything in between is like a good build-up. It does make you think for a while, but once you see something, and I know people who have played this might know what I'm talking about, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I kind of see what's going on here. But still, it's a nice, cute little adventure. It's very charming, again, it's very, very charming. But what I do love about this game is the dynamics of the camera. Now, you can change the camera in 3 different aspects. It does have your typical fixed camera angles, which I actually do like in horror games or survival horror games. But you can also have it over, like, behind the shoulder kind of thing, like right behind you, which is kind of interesting. And you go to like a first-person mode, which is very cool, but it works in some aspects when you do some puzzles, which I thought, again, very ahead of its time. And it doesn't have pre-rendered backgrounds at all. Everything is done from the ground up in 3D, which was very interesting. This is like before Dino Crisis, of course. So again, that's another part of it where I think it is ahead of its time and kind of outshines Resident Evil in that aspect. Another thing that I really did love about the game is just the characters. You actually do feel for them, especially Raz. He's not your typical macho dude. He actually cries, he has emotions, he questions himself. And again, you really do feel for the character. And it's very, very odd for a game at this time because, again, it can either go one way. Very B-movie or just kind of generic. But they kind of do a fine line in between. And again, the characters in here are pretty great, but mostly the one that steals the show is Raz and, of course, Pipo. Rest in peace, Pipo. Another thing I really love about this game is its soundtrack. From its awesome, eerie, synthesized flute music to add more to the cold, isolation, the atmosphere of the game, to its awesome late 80s, early 90s saxophone jazz. Now let me tell you something, that jazz is very smooth.
So, is your memory gone too?
I can't remember anything.
And we really are in the same predicament.
So it would seem.
We'll just have to get out of it together then.
Sure, you and me.
There's just one thing, it seems I have some sort of infection.
Infection? What kind of infection?
I'm afraid I may turn into one of those creatures.
We'll get you help, don't worry.
But you must promise me, if any infection takes over, you must do what you can to get away from me. Do you understand?
Don't talk that way. We'll get help before it comes to that, I promise.
Now, by today's standards, yes, I can kind of see people saying that this game is very, very janky or very, very stiff, but in all honesty, it's not that bad. You do get to learn the controls as it goes on. The only thing that I can fault it a little bit is its QuickTime events. Again, this game has QuickTime events, and it's not too shocking to see QuickTime events on the PlayStation 1 because after playing Rising Zan, which also has QuickTime events, I wasn't too surprised when I saw it here. It's just they don't really tell you what buttons to press. So sometimes you have to press the exam button in certain cases or the jump button. Again, they don't really elaborate too much on that, which kind of hurts it a little bit. The other thing which I wish it kind of did is kind of let you know of a hint when there's like an item around. You do have to really search in some areas because they won't really give you something like, hey, look, there's a hidden item here. It only works when people was around because people would kind of make like a sound or so if there was something around and that gave you like a hint, maybe there's a clue here or a tool to use for a certain puzzle. So you do have to like scour around a little bit, but it's not too horrible. I mean, it's not like a big open area. It's very easy to get by it. The only thing I will say that's a little confusing is the intro when you wake up. You just have to kind of make yourself warm because you might die in like a frozen state. The intro is the only thing that's a little janky with it explaining things mostly, but after that, everything is kind of smooth sailing, at least in my opinion. And in conclusion, guys, that is my thoughts on OverBlood. Yes, not the most perfect game, a bit janky, but if you're also a fan of games like Deadly Premonition or like weird games like Rising Zan and stuff like that, then this is definitely a must pick up. I loved my time with this. It's definitely a hidden gem, and I urge anyone who is kind of thinking twice about it, please just give it a try. And my pro tip I can give you though is definitely save your bullets, because that last boss battle can be a pain in the ass if you're low on bullets. It is still possible with your punches and tickets, but those bullets will definitely help. All right, guys, so I'll see you all later and stay tuned for more. Bye.